the Housing Commission has simply confirmed what the dogs on the street know, that the government's housing policy is an absolute disastrous failure. And the catalogue of human misery that is visiting on thousands and thousands of individuals and families and children should be well known to you if you're knocking on doors. You couldn't possibly miss it, because it is house after house after house impacted by one type or another of housing misery. And yet, the government come in here and amend housing motions and trumpet the success of their housing policies. It's an insult. It's an insult to the people who are in homeless accommodation. It is an insult to people who are a decade or 2 decades on a housing list. It is an insult to working people who are working hard and paying their taxes and haven't got the slightest chance of affording the house prices that are out there at the moment, or who are paying 50 or 60 or 70% of their income on these absolutely disgustingly obscene rents that are being charged. You will not find anywhere in Dublin now for less than €2,000 a month. More likely €2,500 a month, and very often €3,000 a month. Who could afford this? Who could afford it? But somebody's making a lot of money. Let's not forget that bit. The people who are charging those rents are making a lot of money. But ordinary people are being crucified with those kind of rents, robbed of the chance of saving for a home, and in huge numbers of cases, it's simply so far out of their reach, they are living at home with their parents. Sometimes they are living at home with their parents and their grandparents in absolutely outrageous Dickensian conditions. Conditions reminiscent of this city at the beginning of the 20th century. They were decried by Sean O'Casey and, the slum conditions that led to things like the 1913 lockout. It is absolutely outrageous. I'll just give you some of the examples I'm dealing with at the moment. Nicola had already spent 6 years in homeless accommodation, managed to get a HAP tenancy, and is now being evicted with 3 children. Not high up enough the list, told to get a HAP. Find an alternative HAP. The HAP limits, as you know, highest 1,300. If you're homeless, might go up to 1,900. So you have to go and find somewhere for 1,900. No such place exists. No such place exists. So what you're actually telling people in this desperate situation, somebody who's already been homeless with their 3 children, is you're going to be homeless again. And we won't even guarantee you'll get own door accommodation. You may be sent into the city centre in a hostel, because we can't even give you something in your own area near where your kids go to school. Or Ellen, who has an OT report about their scoliosis, which means they need level access living. Refused medical priority, even though the OT has a report saying they have to have this, told to go and find a HAP tenancy that will suit their medical need. So now we're actually overriding medical professionals on the housing needs and saying, no, because we don't have the houses, we're going to say you don't really have that medical need and you have scoliosis. So you're living in totally unsuitable conditions. Or what about Niamh and Anthony? 20 months homeless with 2 children. 1 male, 1 female, who are now in the same room together, facing into their possible 3rd Christmas homeless. Or what about Amy and her husband, who's a bus driver? They're now facing a no-fault eviction. Between them, they have an income of €48,000. That means they're over the threshold for social housing. Now, it's bad enough if you're eligible for social housing, but are told you're going to be 10 or 15 years before you get a social house, and you've got to go and find a HAP tenancy that doesn't exist. But if you're a few €1,000 over the threshold, you don't even get HAP. You're absolutely goosed. Now, I don't know how many times I've said this to you, right? Or maybe you'll be told, oh, you're eligible for cost rental, but there's no cost rental. Or there's a tiny amount of cost rental, but then you might be like Jane, whose income is €42,000, over the thresholds for social housing, eligible for cost rental when it came up in her area, in terms of the income bracket she's in, but unfortunately her income's not enough for the rent, for the cost rental, therefore deemed ineligible on income grounds. Similarly with Jimmy, single dad and a daughter, take-home pay €46,000, above the income for social housing, takes home €3,830, but not enough obviously to pay rents of €3,000 a month, self-evidently. What about the cost rental? Yes, in terms of the band, he should be eligible, but on income grounds, the rent for the cost rental is too high because it's more than 35% of his income. Ineligible. Ineligible. Right? And it just goes on. The misery goes on. What about V? I'll just use the letter of her first name. 65 years old, forced to share a room with strangers at homeless accommodation, severely impacted medical health. Or what about another mother who's 38, has a 12-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old son, a 7-year-old son, who she sleeps with in one bedroom. In one bedroom, the school have written to say that children are withdrawing themselves, such as the impact on their mental health. They've left loads of letters coming from the doctors saying their mental health is in bits. Denied medical priority. Sorry, your kids may be being absolutely destroyed by this experience. Your mental health may be destroyed by this experience. That's not a priority. Not a priority, because we don't have enough three-bedroom houses. Something I've warned you. Now, you see, as against your trumpeting of your successes, what's actually happening in Dublin? What's actually happening? What's happening is there are apartment blocks being built. Those apartment blocks are being bought up mostly by investors. Those investors, like the one that's just being completed in Blackrock, for example, in my area, we're knocking on the door there, bought up by investors, built to rent. And, you know, next door, there's a woman whose son, who's in, I think, his 30s, mid-30s, living. She's saying, Jesus, that would have been ideal for my son, who's working and so on. But no, the investors have bought it. Right? And what are the investors going to do with it? Well, they'll charge either rents of €3,500, which no ordinary working person can afford, or maybe they will get some HAP tenants in where the state will pay. Maybe, if you're lucky. But in reality, probably a lot of the times, not. Now, what could we have done about that? Because the houses are being built, and this is what's happening all over the place. Apartments. We get 10% social housing, the rest is unaffordable. Totally unaffordable, bought up by investors. Well, there's one answer we could do fairly immediately, isn't there? And say, we don't need unaffordable housing. Right? We don't need it. So, instead of the investors buying up, they should just be taken out of the picture, banned out of the Irish market, the vulture funds and so on. Sorry, you're not buying up the small amount of housing we desperately need. You are not going to buy it to extort people with extortionate friends. We're getting you out of the market. We're giving you 6 months to leave this country, and the state will step in and make sure every single unit that is delivered is either social or cost rental or affordable purchase. Right? That can be done. We have the money to do it. It would save us money if we did that in the long term in terms of HAP payments. The more people we house permanently and securely and affordably, the more money we will save in the long run. And in any event, we have a huge flipping budget surplus anyway. Right? And also, we need to get more people working directly on the basis of building social affordable housing on the basis of what we need, not on when private developers feel like it could be profitable for them to build. The amount of vacant or derelict property or zoned sites that they are sitting on, waiting until it suits them, and they can make enough money, is disgraceful, and you won't do anything about it.
tens of thousands of vacant properties, thousands of derelict properties, and huge amounts of zoned, serviced residential land these people sit on and drip feed into the market as it suits them, or even worse, leave it empty because it's an appreciating asset they can make money off and flip. That stuff has to be stopped. You don't stop it because, to be honest, you're not interested in these people, or the government isn't. You're interested in the speculators and the developers.
Thank you, Deputy Boyd Barrett.